Chapter 1 The Black Panther ceremonial chamber. Coney was faster than T'Challa, so she was able to steal his voice while the heart-shaped herb fluid was reapplied to his body. As T'Challa rose from the ritual ground, he knew it was his voice that was in a marble-like container which shined as Coney held it in her fingers to taunt him. "Return Shang's heart and you will get this back," said Coney before she vanished, and the hooded robe that she had worn fell to the ground where the bodies of the two custodians of the herb laid. T'Challa's hyper senses detected that his friends were not dead and he roused them. "Why can't you speak?" they asked. The Black Panther patted their shoulders to say that everything would be fine. He did not have Shang's heart, but he knew where to start looking for it. Shuri's home. Kana suddenly went silent. "Honey?" asked Shuri as she glanced out of the room. Kana was levitated and he convulsed. "Kana!" Shuri yelled, but before she could move she heard Darth Plagueis' voice. "Don't be surprised, I told you that I would return to pick up where we left off. You have reached the peak of your resurrection gift and now it must belong to me," said Darth Plagueis. "Don't tell your brother or anyone else." "What will you do with my husband?" asked Shuri. "He is my prisoner, he will not remember my attacks, but each occurrence will take a toll on him in ways that will, well, I will leave the rest to your imagination." "If you want me to resurrect you, then let us get over with it," Shuri said. "I have moved beyond such a petty goal. You and I have places to go." Darth Plagueis disappeared. Kana slowly descended and stood still, then he resumed his conversation. "Wait a minute, why are you looking at me like that?" asked Kana. Shuri hugged him. "I love you," said Shuri. "I love you too, baby," said Kana. A projection of Okoye came from the kimoyo that was on the table. "Tony Stark has asked for asylum in Wakanda. He is nearing our border," said Okoye. "We have work to do, sweetheart," said Kana, and the couple went to the commando division. On the way, Shuri received a message from T'Challa about Coney's attack and that he was on his way to Reed Richards. Chapter 2 So T'Challa was Little Mermaid by a voice thief, said Tony Stark. "I don't see that as a downside for a guy who was always the silent type." Both he and Black Bolt can compare notes. Shuri was expressionless. "It was a joke," said Tony. "Why are you here?" asked Shuri. "I am sure you are monitoring my scandal," replied Tony. Shuri glanced at Okoye and the Durham mileage leader spoke. "Yes, we heard about the sexual assault allegations." "Are they true?" asked Okoye. "I don't remember. The women coming forward claimed that the attacks happened when I was based in San Francisco. I was a spiraling mess at the time," replied Tony. "I need time to piece things together before I surrender to the authorities. Please, I am begging. Every bounty hunter is tracking me on and off the planet." "You have until the end of the week," said Shuri. "If you try to extend your stay, then we will throw you out to the surviving Iron Man mob." "Thank you, Shuri," said Tony as he knelt on one knee and held her hand. "I will not forget this." 30 minutes later, Shuri watched the international newsreel from social media and major news companies as they lambasted Wakanda for protecting Tony. Apparently he was tracked to Wakanda, which was suspicious to Shuri. Some of Tony's accusers were African American women, which the news outlets stressed, and they analyzed why a black nation like Wakanda aided Tony. One online commentator said, "It is about interests. Some of us black people held up Wakanda like gods, lived vicariously through them, thinking that their success was our success and thought that they were looking out for our interest. Well, this is the cold water that some of us needed. Wakanda is for Wakanda alone. It has always been like this until the T'Challa era, but he has been tethering on political expulsion ever since. Tony Stark and T'Challa are Avengers buddies, and we don't know what secrets old Buckethead is keeping for that entitled Negro. It's like what Dr. John Henrik Clarke used to say," another commentator asked. Is Wakanda even an African country? Let us separate emotions from facts. Shuri didn't bother to listen to the rest of the feeds, but she saw the short-term effects on the soft power that Wakanda had in America through its connections with a few African American organizations. The scandal would damage the relationships. She could ignore the detractors or send out online robots to spin a counter-narrative. She decided on the latter. She wished that she could include the truth on why her brother joined the Avengers in the campaign, but it might not go down well that it was to spy on them. Chapter 3 The Baxter Building. T'Challa opened the head of Leonardo da Vinci and attached a cable to the cybernetics in the man's brain to the Kimoyo computer that was integrated into his suit. Susan Richards looked on as her husband had gone a quest to find his uncle. Recently T'Challa had shown Reed a video of the uncle working for Da Vinci, and Reed had left that morning thinking that he finally found his kin in another dimension. T'Challa had just missed Reed by a few minutes. The Black Panther entered the cyberspace of Da Vinci's mind and found him in the dark as he stared at the illuminated painting of Jesus called the Salvatore Mundi. I should sue for copyright infringement because my simple painting was copied and carried all over the world to the point it became the definitive face of Jesus, said Da Vinci. So you are not really dead but steadily regaining your strength in the recesses of the celestial technology, said T'Challa. Tell me where Shang's heart is and I will free you from the celestial parasite. It is a child, not a parasite, said Da Vinci. It was a child once, now it is acting out its nature through you. Your public legacy is in ruins, said T'Challa. I doubt that because I am the Vitruvian Man and so many other things to the world, bad press from Wakanda will not hurt my reputation. Come back with a more meaty offer, said Da Vinci. T'Challa drew his claws and shredded Da Vinci's back with a few swipes. The terrorist mastermind yelled in agony. I am dismantling everything you built, every nefarious organization, every connection, piece by piece. There will be no Hydra, no shield, no nothing, just you living on less than a half a byte of memory in an otherwise dead alien. Your life work over the centuries would be for nothing, and men like Reed and Stark will replace you in the annals of history, said T'Challa. Da Vinci arched his body as he fell onto his side. T'Challa held the man's face tightly. Tell me, where is Shang's heart? Wakanda. Shuri's day worsened when Wakandan's voiced disapproval of Tony Stark's presence in the nation. She decided to buy some time by sending a press release stating that Wakanda was investigating the allegations made against its longtime ally. Then she called the spy Nakia. Where are you now? The Jeffrey Epstein socialite dinner circuit, replied Nakia. I have to reassign you to investigate what is taking place behind the scenes in the Tony Stark scandal. I can do that from my current mission. The whole point that Epstein throws these dinners is to get the elite to let their guards down so he can get intel for his handlers. I am sure someone knows what may really be going on with Tony Stark. Okay, I trust your instincts, but I need info in 70 hours, said Shuri. Will do, said Nakia. Later Shuri went to Tony and he told her that so far his old enemies were not involved in the scandal. Probably a new one, said Shuri. How are your associates coping? Pepper, Rodini, Jarvis, and Williams are off the grid. I dealt with that first. Any word from T'Challa? No. How has your day been going? Pretty normal considering my life, replied Shuri. The prosecutors said 5 minutes ago that they will go ahead with the case without me and ask the judge to give a guilty verdict. There are also people linking my ancestors to the transatlantic slave trade. I have never seen anything like this. Your problematic reputation made you an easy target. That was my old life. I am a new person. Some people may not be willing to distinguish the two, said Shuri. Afterwards, when Shuri returned to her office, she received word that the African American Associates of Wakanda had formally sent letters to sever ties with the nation. Next story, Dr. Amos Wilson Chapter 1 Wakanda. The citizen crossed the Zwini stream bridge and walked up the incline. He wiped the perspiration from his face and was thankful for the strong wind that abruptly came down the incline. It was hot at that time of the year, and even though it was dusk, the heat did not let up. He finally reached his destination, which was a circular house that was rumored to have 1,000 rooms despite its outward appearance as a single-room abode. The house was brown like the Ngisi bean that was used in Wakandan coffee. He imagined that at that very moment Tony Stark was in the house idly drinking Wakandan coffee while the world crumbled because of his actions. T'Challa created the guest house through shadow physics for his foreign friends to have a safe haven if needed. The assassin Bucky Barnes and the mutant Jean Grey were recent occupiers of the house. Most Wakandans had heard about the place, but few had seen it. The citizen's gaze lingered on the structure in the hope of seeing Tony Stark, but he was not successful. He took out his kimoyo and took a picture of the house, then he captioned the pic with the words, "This is where the criminal Tony Stark aka Iron Man is hiding out in Wakanda." The citizen selected his American friend from the list of contacts in the kimoyo in which to send the picture, but got an access denied warning. A gale almost lifted the citizen off of the ground, and it caused part of his attire to flap in his face. He brushed the cloth out his face and saw a flock of blackbirds over him. The birds formed into the woman Shuri, and she landed next to the citizen. "What are you doing?" she asked. The citizen stumbled backwards because Shuri had a gravitas about her, and her unique Membek warrior uniform amplified her mystique. "What is your name, citizen?" asked Shuri. The citizen regained his wits because he suspected that the Wakanda commando unit which Shuri headed had blocked his kimoyo and had by then traced his identity. He surmised that Shuri already knew his name but just wanted him to say it. He found that she looked at him with genuine concern, and that eased the tension in him. He gave his name and stated his grievances. "Do you know what has happened because of the asylum we have given Tony Stark? My work with teaching children in America through Wakanda's outreach initiative has been suspended because the organization I was connected to has taken a stance against Wakanda's decision," said the citizen. "I was inspired by T'Challa's work as a school teacher in America, where he taught kids from a Wakandan perspective and psychology. He taught them to be builders, self-sufficient and thinkers." "Which organization were you affiliated with?" asked Shuri. "The Dr. Amos Wilson Military College. It was an online program," replied the citizen. "What was your intention by sending the picture? To shame your government into reversing its decision?" "Yes. The picture would have been copied to the news outlets in the world," replied the citizen. Shuri held his shoulder and said, "I understand your frustration, but I will not lie to you. Wakanda is renowned for being impenetrable, and it is this reason that certain individuals seek refuge here. A photo leak of this type ruins that reputation and jeopardizes the intelligence gathering and security strategies of the country. Keeping Tony Stark here was a calculated move by Wakanda. But what about my students? We will negotiate with the school. This matter with Tony Stark should be resolved shortly. That is another thing on my mind. Stark is accused of being a rapist in America. There is even a rumor that he harassed a woman here when he first visited Wakanda years ago," said the citizen. "I have the file on Tony's activities in Wakanda over the years. He did have a public drunken exchange with the woman at a banquet which was pre-planned with her in order to misdirect an enemy of T'Challa who was in the ranks of high officials," said Shuri. "If it were anything else, then T'Challa would have thrashed Stark then and there. Where is T'Challa, by the way? He has not given a public response to our concerns about Stark." "My brother is defending the nation elsewhere as we speak," replied Shuri. Elsewhere, the mind space of the cyborg Leonardo da Vinci admitted T'Challa that hacking into both my mind and the Celestials at the same time places a strain on your body. I would wager that it depletes the heart-shaped herb properties in your bloodstream because an ordinary human would die from such an endeavor. Most likely you learned from the previous hack and now you use an intermediate interface like a cable, said Leonardo da Vinci. T'Challa's experience made him question why was da Vinci monologuing. He glanced over to da Vinci's painting of Jesus called Salvator Mundi, which meant Savior at the end of the world. T'Challa studied those words as he peered into the painting to the point that he saw the program code that ran in the background. The code language did not seem right for a mere graphic representation of a painting. The overall painting shined like a beacon in the darkness of the mindscape, and then it dawned on T'Challa that the painting was a disguised homing beacon program. That was probably the reason that T'Challa found Da Vinci staring at it when he had arrived in the mind space. "Who is coming for you?" asked T'Challa. "I'm not sure because I created so many weapon programs over the centuries. It could be Phantom X, Weapon 16, Deathloke and any one of your allies," replied Da Vinci. "Good," said T'Challa. "What?" asked Da Vinci. T'Challa removed his hands from around Da Vinci's throat and he pushed them into the painting in order to hack the program. Da Vinci was correct that these intense hacks depleted T'Challa mentally and physically, but the Black Panther endured it. Later, in an alternate universe, the island of Wakanda in the Africa Ocean, T'Challa entered the throne room of Mkoni the Black Panther and dropped Da Vinci's severed head in front of her. She was alone as expected. "I asked for Shang's heart and you bring me this," said Mkoni. She rose from the Sika Adwa, the golden ceremonial stool, and picked up her twin-blade sword of Bashinga. "Is this the person that wanted to kill Shang?" asked Mkoni as she raised the head with the sword. "Yes," replied Da Vinci's head in T'Challa's voice. "You were foolish to think that stealing my natural voice was something I could not work around. You are using the neuron computers in your mask to link to the head, but I doubt that you don't miss your natural voice," said Mkoni and threw the head back to T'Challa. "You are a Black Panther after all, and pride is one of our flaws. Do you know where Shang's heart is?" "No, and I don't care to look for it," replied T'Challa. "Ha! I am more interested in the means in which you broke into my Wakanda. I am here to destroy it," said T'Challa. "You might be more experienced than me, but not smarter or stronger. I am very much your superior, so you cannot beat me," said Mkoni. "Might I add that you have broken into my Wakanda as well? Hack into the head and speak to the one who knows the location of what you seek," said T'Challa. Mkoni returned to the Sika Adwa and opened her palm to show a translucent sphere. Her Kimoyo bracelet and Black Panther suit lighted up as an image formed in the sphere. Leonardo da Vinci's mind space was in the sphere and his feeble image lay on its side. "You there, wake up," said Mkoni. "I know that voice," said Da Vinci. "Your vital signs are fading, so let us be quick," said Mkoni. T'Challa could tell that she did a far deeper hack than he had done, which should deplete her body's heart-shaped herb properties much faster than his. The image of Da Vinci flickered and then broke apart like pieces of glass. T'Challa chose that moment to attack. He was on Mkoni in a flash and he grabbed the Kimoyo bracelet from her wrist. She fought back with a knee to the gut and an elbow to the jaw. She managed to toss him overhead and attempted to cut him with the sword, but inadvertently sliced Da Vinci's head instead. T'Challa hacked the Kimoyo bracelet and found the locations for his stolen voice and the array for breaking into his Wakanda. He teleported to the array without hesitation. The array was on an islet in the southern Africa Ocean. The cream pillars stood close together in a circle. T'Challa blew them apart with spears of light, and then he went to collect his voice in a region called Guyana. Chapter 2. Shuri browsed through the list of directors on the board of the Dr. Amos Wilson Military College and she saw the name Professor Michael Collins. She knew him as the cyborg Deathloke the Demolisher. He was a friend of T'Challa and had stayed at the guest house too. So Shuri called him directly on the link to his CPU. "Who is this?" asked Deathloke. "Shuri. T'Challa's sister." "Yes. Is this call about the situation with Iron Man? Don't you think it is an overreaction to end ties with my nation? Asked Shuri. Things have shifted in America, especially with African Americans, and Wakanda has entered into something that it just does not understand, replied Deathlock. Can you elaborate? Later, because I have to supervise a session now. Switching off. Shuri thought that the call ended abruptly because she was about to tell him that the FBI labeled the school a black identity terrorist training ground and they had undercover agents in it. The FBI also cited that graduates of the school had taken up key positions in Wall Street, the U.S. military, and the loose association of African American megacorporations termed Black Wall Street. Shuri put away her kimono and she entered the guest house. She met Tony Stark in the midst of holographic computer screens. Do you remember blackmailing the US government when you were based in San Francisco just around the time that your accusers said that you assaulted them? Asked Shuri. I remember the blackmail, and also I did contaminate the San Francisco city's water supply with a nanomachine virus to make people healthy, but they had to pay me to keep the virus activated, replied Tony Stark. Did the nanovirus give you control of the minds of the infected? Asked Shuri. It depended on the dosage, but yes, in some instances yes, I did have control. Shuri sighed and sat next to him. Tony, you drugged women with the nanovirus and they attended your parties, said Shuri. You may not have had sex with the women, but under the new laws what you did is rape. I see where this is going, said Tony Stark. The media empire that you tried to acquire in that time period is the one that tracked down your accusers and made the documentary on you. The military general that you blackmailed was a friend of the California state attorney who made your incarceration a priority in order for the general to back him in the next presidential election cycle, said Shuri. Shuri opened a hologram from her kimono to show a battle on the island Genosha where the personalities of Tony Stark and other Avengers were inverted by a chaos magic spell performed by Scarlet Witch and Doctor Doom. I became evil like the other Avengers and I relocated to San Francisco. I cannot use that as an alibi to save myself now because the superhuman community kept it a secret. I would be snitching on my friends, said Tony Stark. Shuri turned over the hologram and on the flip side was a blank slate. Wakanda can make this scandal go away in exchange for the designs for the Soul's Hammer 3 that you have hidden next to a star in Textra Galaxy, said Shuri. What happened to friendship? Asked Tony Stark. Wakanda does not have friends, it has interests. Also, you shall return to America and serve a sentence for jumping bail. More importantly, you will sponsor abused women organizations for the rest of your life. I will do that, but how exactly will you overturn this scandal? The media empire's chairman will be arrested along with his friend Jeffrey Epstein in a trafficking ring. The state attorney general will have to resign because of his cover-up of a police kill squad and other corrupt practices. The judge in your criminal trial will have to answer bribery charges. Because you already paid off your victims in civil court, the criminal trial was a matter between you and the state, not the victims. Once the puppet masters pulling the strings for the state are removed, then you are practically free to go, replied Shuri. As a woman, are you okay with this? No, but the people who are out to destroy you are equally evil as you are. You are both trash, replied Shuri. Next story. Dr. Yvonne van Sertima Chapter 1. The audience's applause filled the auditorium and the presenter waited for silence to return, then he resumed his speech. My purpose is not to scare you, it is to prepare you. Once upon a time long ago, 3 characteristics needed to exist before an organism was classified as a human being. The first characteristic was no animality, the second was no divinity or godhood, and the last was no barbarity. So if you were not an animal, a god, or a savage, then you were a human being. Our people were categorized as being barbaric savage, so we were not considered human for a very long time. Now we are considered civilized, but a cruel joke has been played on us. Transhumans and posthumans are the new definitions of mankind. So while we were enjoying being human again, others have moved on from that state of being to merge with cybernetics. What was even funnier was that we were the ones experimented on in order for that leap forward in human evolution to have ever taken place. We have Agent Zero or Weapon O programs, we have experiments done to our men and women in maximum security prisons, even on the police force there are people like us who have cyber enhancements, and worst yet, our dearly loved ones were resurrected for the role of guinea pigs in the name of human-machine mergers. We are behind the post-humans and those other people living on that island. It used to be Nation X in San Francisco, but now it called I can't remember. Someone help me. The audience responded with the name Clarke. Shuri sat in the back row of the top tier. She was in civilian American clothes and wore a head wrap. She was alone on the fact-finding mission at the Foundational Black Summit. She had already noticed the informants that the FBI and Russia had planted in some of the groups that were closer to the stage. The FBI always had a concern about militant blacks, and Russia always saw the black descent as a means of unsettling the political climate in Washington, D.C. since the Cold War era. The speaker finished his presentation 20 minutes later and the conference took a refreshments break. Shuri went straight for the post-human called Deathik the Demolisher in military circles and Doctor in civilian ones. He was an example of the resurrected African Americans who were experimented on. She passed participants from Africa, the Caribbean, and Europe based on their accents. She speculated that they wanted to show solidarity with the foundational blacks. Shuri patted Deathloke's shoulder to get his attention. "I am surprised that you are here," he said. "I was intrigued. Where is T'Challa?" "He did not come." "Which means he is on a mission somewhere." Shuri smiled. "I have come to renegotiate terms between Wakanda and your military college," she said. "I may seem ungrateful since I was bestowed one of Wakanda's highest honors to a foreigner, however I have to represent my constituents who are a major reason for this summit," said Deathloke. "Look, Wakanda has interests and the Black Society of America also has interests. They may come into conflict at times, but we must try to work together," said Shuri. Deathloke smiled and then said, "It will take time." Suddenly a scream came from the center of the auditorium where a large group of people had mingled. The crowd of people was too thick to push through, so Shuri transformed into a flock of birds much to the amazement of bystanders, and she flew over to where the scream emanated. A black and gold humanoid had his hands on two people who were turning into albinos. Shuri transformed back into a human and stomped her feet on the humanoid's head. She felt as though he was made from iron. He pulled her down and snatched her arm. For an instant Shuri saw the depletion of melanin from her arm, and she responded by naturally turning her skin metallic. She jabbed the humanoid in his nose and chin, but the blows were ineffective. "It's Shuri," the crowd said, and she became aware that her disguise fell apart due to the scuffle. The humanoid lifted her twice and slammed onto the floor so hard that it shook the auditorium. Shuri did not let go of him, and she scratched at his eyes. The humanoid levitated and shot through the roof with Shuri on him. He went to a high altitude and fell like a comet back into the urban area. Shuri managed to see that it was playground with people in it that the humanoid intended to land on. She turned into the Cobra Eagle, and the giant bird broke out of the humanoid's grasp and pulled him out of the descent. "I must feed on your melanin," said the humanoid in a loud voice which hurt Shuri's ears and made her screech. She released the humanoid by mistake and he fell into the streets, and he ran away from her with superhuman speed. Shuri chased after him, but he threw a Clarke gateway into his path and entered it. Only mutants had access to Clarke through the gateway, so the chase ended. Chapter 2 Wakanda, Twisted Visions. Lake. On the shore of the lake, T'Challa took in the sights and smells of Wakanda through his heightened senses. A couple on the lake waved at him and he returned the gesture. T'Challa was back home and immediately there was a problem to tackle from what he saw on his internal cyber-optics of the Black Panther ceremonial uniform. Shuri concluded in her report that she believed the attack at the summit was staged. The perpetrator was after melanin from blacks which he could have got in Africa. The Clarke Gateway might have been a white flag tactic to rally blacks against mutants. What T'Challa found interesting was that the term blacks in the United States was being used differently by the people it described. To him, African Americans were breaking down into ethnic groups based on lineage to slavery in geographical terms. It was almost like how different ethnic groups viewed themselves and others on the African continent even though they were all labeled as blacks. While the world focused on Clarke, he would check on the post-human nation of Bilderberg, which was an artificial island in the Indian Ocean and only machine humanoids could access it. Meanwhile, the humanoid that attacked the summit was named Bitten and he prepared for his next attack.